Hello, my name is Mary Ellen Barrett, and I've been homeschooling for about 24 years now. There have been so many changes in homeschooling since I first started. Back then, we used to get funny questions like, is that even legal? I rarely live outside of the law, and thanks to many visionaries like Dr. Mary K. Clark, homeschooling has been legal in all 50 states for a long time now. The other most common question I would get would be, what about socialization? This still makes me laugh because socialization is actually the entire reason why I decided to homeschool, or while my husband and I decided to homeschool. Back in the year 2000, my son Ryan was in third grade. When he was 3 years old, he had been diagnosed with something called pervasive developmental disorder, which I think these days now you would describe as being neurodivergent. At the time, that was the diagnosis we were given, and it placed him squarely on the spectrum of autism disorders. He went to a special ed preschool because at the time he was 3 years old, and the thinking was that if he wasn't functionally verbal by the time he was 4, that he never would be. So he went to a special preschool that immersed him in language, and he was able to talk by the time he was 4, which was wonderful. The people who taught him there were terrific. He then moved on to a special ed kindergarten and eventually was in a local public school in an ABA, which is Applied Behavior Analysis Program, which is a special educative method for autistic children. And he did pretty well. It was difficult. There were challenges, and he was moving along, but he was in a self-contained class with 8 other children who moved up with him for 2nd and 3rd grade. And by the time they got to 3rd grade, things were starting to come apart at the seams a little bit, both socially and academically. Ryan had a low IQ, and they were moving him along with the no child left behind kind of premise before he was ready to do certain things, which led to a lot of frustration on his part. And socially, things were very difficult because he was starting to pick up abnormalities from other children in the class. And there were some children in the class who, because they were difficult, their parents kind of were lax in their parenting, I guess is how you would put it. And one child in particular was allowed to stay up and watch very, very late night television, not the late night television you might be thinking of now, but middle of the night television. And he would bring to the classroom all of these images and stories and language that should not be in an 8-year-old's classroom. And this kind of broke my heart as a mother because I felt like my child's innocence was being robbed. And he was very innocent. And he had a natural piety about him, Ryan did, that was not something I wanted to destroy. Now, my daughter at the time, my next youngest, Katie, was in 1st grade at our local Catholic school. And you would think that that would be better socially, but it really wasn't. She, too, went to school with a lot of other children whose parents did not have the same parenting philosophies that we did. Now, at the time, the Disney Channel had a bunch of shows that I would not allow in my house. They are very mild compared to what's on TV now, but at the time, I just didn't like smart talk. And I didn't like that smart alecky kind of thing. And I thought people were rude on these shows. I was a young mother, and I was doing the best I could. But of course, Katie went to school and learned all about these shows. And when she went to other people's houses, she learned all about them and was able to watch them there. So it really kind of broke my heart that my children's innocence was kind of being depleted and destroyed through these other things. What came to fruition then was that I went to a SEPTA meeting. SEPTA stands for the Special Ed PTA. And it was all 5 elementary schools in our district and the middle school. And the meeting was at the middle school. And when I got there, there was this young mother sobbing, crying hysterically. I felt terrible for her. And she was telling the middle school principal how her child, who was similarly affected by autism as Ryan, was being bullied in school. I mean, very badly bullied. And she was just so upset. The middle school principal, who I think was a very nice man, said he understood, but there was nothing he could do. He had talked to the children's parents. Nothing changed, and he couldn't expel or suspend these children. I was horrified at this, that this young boy who was different than all of his classmates, was the weird kid, was getting bullied and abused in a way that was making his life miserable. So I went home and I said to my husband, he's never going to that school. He's just never going to that school. And my husband was, a little, okay, well, let's look for private school or something. And honestly, we could ill afford private school, and I just didn't know what to do. I was really upset. So a friend of mine had started homeschooling her children, and I honestly didn't even consider it as a possibility because I thought, my son is disabled. He has all of these learning challenges. How could I possibly do this? I'm not an expert in any of this. But she said, no, just come with me to this homeschool gathering they had once a week at this beautiful garden area on Long Island where I live. And they called it Nature Club. And the kids would run around and play, and the moms would drink coffee and catch up. It was just as much socialization for the moms as it was for the children. So she took me to Nature Club. I took Ryan out of school. It was a Wednesday, and just to go see all of these people. So I went there, and I ran into my friend from college. Her name is Alice. I had no idea she had been homeschooling. We hadn't seen each other in a couple of years. So we were sitting, talking, catching up. And I do the mom scan, looking around. Where's that kid? Where's that kid? And I saw Ryan was with a group of boys, and he was playing. They were playing with him. He was with this group of boys playing something with a ball. I don't even know. And I said, Alice, Ryan's playing with little boys. I had never seen him play with other kids. He wasn't the kid that got invited to birthday parties. He wasn't the kid on the playground who people invited, because he was just kind of the weird kid. And Alice looked around and said, yeah, I know. They're fine. It's okay. They're not doing anything wrong. She thought I was upset that they were playing a rough game or something. I was delighted. I was almost in tears. I said, nobody ever asks Ryan to play. She said, why not? I said, well, he's different. She said, well, they don't see that. Those kids don't see that. There were a lot of kids in the group who had different ways of being, and they were just kids to these kids. These kids were being socialized by the 10 Commandments. These kids were being socialized to see the face of Christ in everyone. These kids weren't being socialized to pick on people or have cliques or to make fun. These little boys saw another little boy who could throw a ball and said, come play with us. And that was all. He could throw a ball. He was a little boy. They played. I went home that day and I said to my husband, we're going to homeschool. And he said, what? He thought I was nuts. He really did. But I explained it to him. He talked to a homeschool dad. We thought about it. We prayed about it. And he said, all right, let's do this for a year. Let's try this. And we have been for 24 years now. So Ryan just became so much more of what I think God intended him to be. He immediately became less stressed. He caught up a little bit as much as he was capable academically. In school, they were going to put him in 4th grade math, which was a lot of division, but he couldn't multiply. So I was able to take the time that he needed to learn how to multiply before we could teach him division. It took a long time. It took a really long time, but then he could do it. He wasn't being rushed. He wasn't being stressed. He was being taught by people who loved him. He was being surrounded by siblings who loved him and who didn't see him as that weird kid. So he just immediately became better. Our whole family became better. And it gave my husband and I a lot of courage. It really gave us a lot of courage to put him out there in the world, to let him do the things that he really wanted to do. I had been so nervous and afraid of putting my odd little boy out there. Now, like many people who have Ryan's difficulties, he was a savant in one thing. He had perfect pitch, and he could play any instrument or sing beautifully. He could hear something on the radio and pick up a guitar and play it, or play it on the piano. He could just mimic that beautifully, and he wanted to be in the boys' choir. And I had always been nervous about it, the boys' choir at church. But him being so much himself and having so much more self-confidence gave me the courage to allow him to join the boys' choir. So I dropped him off for that first rehearsal, and I'm trying to explain to the choir master, he's just this, he's that, he's this, and the guy is shooing me away. He's like, okay, don't worry about it. He thought I was nuts. But I dropped off Ryan, and I sat in the parking lot waiting for this to not go well. And at the end of the hour, I went back in to pick him up, and I said to the choir master, who is a dear, dear, wonderful man, I said, how did it go? And he said, it went fine. He's got a really nice voice. And I said, oh, okay, so it's all right. And he said, what is the matter? And I said, well, he's a little odd. He said, Mrs. Barrett, it's a room full of 9-year-old boys. They're all odd. And I just laughed and I relaxed, and he became head choir boy. Now, I think he was the self-appointed head choir boy. I don't think anybody actually gave him that title, but he just fell into that role, and he was just a joy to be around in that choir. And sometimes they would even sing with the adult choir, and all the adult choir members just got a huge kick out of Ryan. It was wonderful. He also joined the Squires, which is a division, the young man's part of the Knights of Columbus. And that was a little more challenging for him because a lot of their activities required a lot of noise and talking to people and being focused. But they were all very kind to him, and they kind of helped him be what he needed to be to do their activities. If he wanted to participate, he had to do what was necessary. And they were really good about coaching him along. And it was all just wonderful. We were so happy in homeschooling all of our children. So life was going on very, very well. And 6 years later, God took our Ryan home. So in that 6 years, he had developed so many friendships and had such a happy life. And it was beautiful. But when he died, we just thought it would be like a small family funeral. And the funeral director at the funeral home said, no, I think you're going to need 2 nights for a wake, and I think you're going to need the big room. And we said, all right, whatever you think. We had over 1,000 people come to the wake and even more to the funeral. Ryan had a wonderful sense of piety, and he loved being at Mass, and he loved singing at Mass, and he loved playing the guitar for the Holy Hour for the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. We have a nice relationship with them. And he just enjoyed all of that, and he wanted to be a priest. So his funeral Mass was concelebrated by 12 priests and a bishop. A bishop came because he had heard Ryan wanted to be a priest, and all priests have a bishop at their Mass. He had 15 altar servers. They were all his friends. They all wanted to serve on the altar, and our pastor was kind enough to say, all right, whoever wants to, just come up on the altar. We'll give you something to do. All of the music ministries in our parish participated in the music. The music was beautiful and very Ryan. There was some praise and worship. There was the Panis Angelicus. There was a great mix of music because he loved all music that praised God. So it was just lovely. When we were leaving the funeral home to go to the Mass, those squires, those sweet young boys, met me outside and asked if they could be his pallbearers. Sorry. So that weird, unsocialized homeschool boy affected so many people and brought such joy to our community. That's what you're doing when you're socializing your child through homeschooling. When you're raising them in the faith and teaching them that the 10 Commandments, the corporal works of mercy, these aren't just things you should try to attain or ideals, that these are the way you live, your children will automatically see the face of Christ in everyone. Homeschooling not only gave me the courage to let Ryan shine and use his talents and gifts to serve God, but it also brought him the friends who saw him for the cool, quirky kid that he was. Those kids who were being raised to see the face of Christ in everyone made the last 6 years of my son's life so much better than they would have been had he stayed in school. This is why homeschooling is superior. Math and science and well-written papers are all great reasons to homeschool. They're excellent reasons to homeschool. Academic excellence is extremely important. But what is even more important is raising a generation of Catholics who know their faith, practice their faith, and are being socialized not by a classroom of similarly aged children, but by parents who want to meet them in heaven someday. The world needs your homeschooled children precisely because they're being socialized differently than other children. The world needs adults who do unto others, who love their neighbors as themselves. We need adults who form their consciences well, who pray in front of abortion clinics, who see the corporal works of mercy as a lifestyle rather than an ideal. We need adults who learned early that we are all made in the image and likeness of God and therefore deserve to be treated with dignity, regardless of stage of life, disability, or personal appearance. This is why socialization is important, not for the reason the person who's asking you that gotcha question thinks, but because we know exactly what being well socialized means. It means to care as much for those who can do nothing for you as for those who can do everything for you. It means to be humble in pursuit of our goals, to serve others, and to be open to the will of God. There isn't a school in the world that will socialize your children toward that end, because that end is what we have to keep in mind. This temporal life is merely a step in the process of being with God, and a well-socialized child will understand the end game. I'm so very grateful that God presented us with the option of homeschooling Ryan and his siblings just at the right time. Because of the wonderful socialization of our local homeschool friends we're receiving, my son left his world secure in the knowledge that he had friends, that he was valued, that he was loved, and there could be no greater gift than those friends could have given him.
We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation from the Seton Speaker Series. Seton Home Study School is an accredited distance school assisting homeschooling parents by providing an academically excellent and authentically Catholic curriculum. Seton staff assists you in customizing our curriculum to be the perfect fit for your child. For more information or to sign up for our free beginner's guide, please visit our website at setonhome.org.